Hi parents, I'm Elaine, a math and science specialist from Great Solution. Is your child spending hours and hours doing questions after questions without seeing their hard work pay off? Completing stacks of past year papers with barely any improvement in their grades? Well, you're not alone. In fact, this is one of the most common problems students face. So everyone says practice makes perfect. Well, this isn't entirely true, not in this context at least. Instead, let us make this quote better by saying targeted practice makes perfect. Excelling in math is not about the number of questions you do, but doing the right type of questions. In short, quality over quantity. It is not as simple as training for a 10K run. Can't complete 10 km on your first try? Try again. The more you run, the further you'll get. In this case, yes, practice makes perfect. But it is not so straightforward with math. We first have to start with a diagnosis. When you feel unwell and go see a doctor, the doctor doesn't treat you by prescribing a mountain of pills. Instead, the doctor asks you questions to narrow down the possible causes and then find the correct treatment for your symptoms. This is the approach that we should be adopting. If your child has been doing poorly for math, or perhaps they've been doing quite well but finding it hard to just move up that grade, identify the causes and treat them. Analyze your child's work and look for the specific topics or concepts that they've been losing marks over. Is it fractions, ratio, percentage, or maybe speed? Or are there specific word problem concepts such as assumption method, units and parts, or working backwards? These are the types of questions that your child should be practicing in order to see a significant improvement in their grades. So ditch those past year papers and stop spending hours on never-ending questions. Target the weak spots by doing topical practice instead. Now, 20 targeted questions beat 100 random questions, hands down. What's more, doing selective questions saves your child so much time, making it an extremely time-efficient method of studying. It's a win-win. The key to targeted practice is to be as specific as possible. Say you've identified the topic of fractions and area of triangles as one of the weaker topics. Now, under the topic of fractions, there are various concepts involved. Is your child struggling with the basic 4 operations of adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing? Or struggling with conversions between improper fractions and mixed numbers? Or perhaps they're doing really well for the foundation part, but often find themselves confused between a fraction of the total and a fraction of the remainder. Or could it be more advanced word problems concepts such as A being a fraction of B, or a fraction of A is equivalent to a fraction of B? Under the topic of area of triangles, is your child struggling with the basic formula of area of triangle, half times base times height? Or perhaps they are more confused with working backwards, finding the base or height of a triangle when the area is provided. Or could it be triangles with common base and height, composite figures involving triangles, or more advanced area and perimeter questions involving overlaps? Make a list of the specific topics and methods to work on and practice questions involving just these concepts. Take a look at this example list and see how we have narrowed down specific concepts within a topic. For fractions, your child might only need to work on remainder concept. For area of triangles, triangles that have the same base or same height. Or maybe we only need to work on volume transfer such that 2 containers reach an equal water level. And lastly, assumption concept versus guess and check. By the way, this is a very common method that students tend to forget and need more practice on. Alright, this is extremely helpful when it comes to time management because for assumption concept, you can typically solve the question in under 5 minutes as compared to guess and check, which takes usually about 15 minutes. This is a fraction revision worksheet done by one of my students, and I have adapted part of his work to show you how we can find out which specific concepts to work on. Now, this student has been doing really well for fractions, but he's been finding it hard to just move up a little bit more when it comes to the advanced word problems. To make a proper diagnosis, what we should do is to label each question with the concept involved. Once that's done, you can see clearly that my student has no issues with the concept of A is a fraction of B. Ticks here, and A is a fraction of B, all correct as well. However, very quickly we can see that he is struggling with the concept of fraction of A equals to a fraction of B. Okay, mistake at the very first step. Alright, again, no problems with A being a fraction of B, ticks here and here. Okay, but when it comes to fraction of A equals to fraction of B, again, the mistake is made at the very first step. So once you have identified the concept involved for each question, it is very easy to spot a pattern. When it comes to the concept of fraction of A equals to fraction of B, or what we call equal fractions in grid solution, there are two main solving methods. Firstly, model. So let's take a look at this question here. 1/5 of John's money is $72 more than 1/4 of Dawn's money. If John has $630, how much money does Dawn have? So if we were to draw a model, 1/5 of John's money, meaning 1 unit of John, is 72 more than 1 unit of Dawn. Since this is just 1/4 of Dawn's money, that would mean that Dawn would have 4 of such units, 4 units. Since this represents only 1/5 of John's money, John would have 5 sets of this combination, making it 5 units and 5 groups of $72. We also know that John has $630, which means this 5 units and $360 must be equivalent to his total, $630. From there, we can find the value of 5 units, 1 unit, and eventually 4 units, which would solve the amount of money Dawn has. Going back to the previous question also involving fraction of A equals to fraction of B, I have used common numerator here as our solving method. 3/4 of Alvin's money is equal to 2/5 of Ashley's money. If Ashley gives Alvin $35, they will have the same amount of money. Question A, express Alvin's money as a fraction of Ashley's money in the lowest terms. And question B, how much money do they have all together? So what we need to do, firstly, is to convert both Alvin and Ashley's fraction into fractions of common numerator. So this tells us that 6 out of 8 units of Alvin's money is equivalent to 6 out of 15 units of Ashley's money. The reason we convert to a common numerator is to make sure that 1 unit of Alvin is equivalent to 1 unit of Ashley. And in a fraction, the denominator always represents the total. So this tells us that Alvin has 8 units in total, while Ashley has 15 units in total, making the fraction of Alvin over Ashley 8 over 15, and this is already in the lowest terms, or simplest form. Following this, the student will not have much problems moving on to the next part of the question because we have already established the correct fraction to use. So you see, the more specific you get, the more accurate your targeted practice, and the more you'll see results. By the way, that's not to say that your child should neglect the other topics. Definitely revisit them from time to time as a maintenance practice to make sure that the other concepts have not been forgotten. I hope this short video has given you a new perspective of how we should be learning the smart way instead of the hard way. Remember everyone, quality over quantity. Thank you for your time. See you in class.